here's the thing. Before we even read this, the European Worlds Points up thing definitely needs an update, right? I tried last season, and this is, first of all, this is not supposed to be an excuse. I didn't do super well at most of the regionals I went to last year, and it was not the system's fault. But still, the fact that regionals with 1,000 players gave you more points than winning a 2,500 player YCS was insane. It was completely insane. So for context, for people who are not part of the Worlds grinders and don't know exactly how you get to Worlds in Europe, besides, you know, the European Championship, the Worlds qualifying points are points that you obtain from regionals and YCSs mainly, and nationals. And the way it worked last season was you get, at a regional, 1 point per 8 players. So what that means is if it's an 80-player regional, for example, the first place gets 10 points, the second place gets 9, and so on and so forth, right? So 80-player regional was worth 10 points, which meant that an 800-player regional was worth 100 points. And a French Open with 1,200 players was worth 150 points, which in and of itself doesn't mean anything, but if you put it into context of what other tournaments give you, it was pretty ridiculous, because a YCS, if you win a YCS, it gives you 96 points, or it gave you 96 points last season, which means that even though a YCS has 2,500 players and was significantly harder to win or get into the top cut for, it was less points, way less points than a regional with 1,000 players. So it was not perfect. It rewarded grinding regionals way more than having consistent results at big tournaments, which has been a critique point of mine for a while. And it's something that has frustrated me a lot, because last season, for example, I did pretty well at multiple YCSs. The only YCS I didn't get points at was YCS Lille, but at YCS Bologna, I got top 8, and YCS Dortmund, I got top 16. I got a lot of points from that, but it wasn't even close to what people got from the big opens. And it just, like, I had a bunch of regionals where I lost like the last round, and then instead of getting 100 points, I only got 20. It was just a very frustrating experience. So let's see what has changed in the World's qualifying points. Once every year, duelists gather at both the European and Oceanic World Championship qualifiers events to compete for the coveted title of champion, but also to determine who will represent their region at the World Championship. Okay. As we approach this year's WCS in Tokyo, we also look ahead to the upcoming 2027 season, as we would like to give you notice of some changes to the European and Oceanic World Championship qualifier structure. For the 27 Worlds season, starting with Chaos Origins, OTS Championships, and Regionals and Open events, there will be some adjustments to how qualifications will be earned. Update: WCQ and WQP earned at regional qualifiers and open events, Europe only. Old invite structure, 1 invite per 8 participants rounded up, uncapped. New invite structure, 1 invite per 8 duelists rounded up, capped at 64. So this means that the points for big regionals are now capped at 64 events, at 64 per regional. So you can no longer have opens that award you 150 points. This is not only for points, by the way, this is also for invites. So this is something that matters for players who want their invite for the European Championship. If you previously at the French Open, for example, with 1,200 players, you would get an invite for the European Championship all the way until 150th. If I understand this correctly here, this is now down to 64 maximum. So you will have to, at the very least, get top 64 at a regional in order to get your invite. You cannot get 150th at the French Open to get your invite. At smaller regionals, of course, this will not change anything, because if your regional was, let's say, 240 players, it would be a 30-point regional before this change and after this change. There's no difference there, you know? So this only really changes for regionals at the, like at very, very large, like 500, 600 plus is when you, when this matters. So only for the really big regionals, it's going to be capped. So yeah, why are we making this change? This change is focused towards the World's Qualifying Points program. When reviewing how duelists have earned World Qualifying Points, we identified that some events falling under the 1 invite per 8 duelist structure were outpacing events such as YCSs despite having significantly less duelists. Yeah, exactly. This was one of my main feedback thingies, is like, you just cannot have someone get more points at an open than someone who wins a YCS. I'll put this into perspective for you. The cutoff for the World's Points playoff last season was so high that, in theory, in a hypothetical scenario where someone would have won all 3 YCSs, they would not have been in the top 16, which is insane if you think about it. The and nationals, if you had won 3 YCSs and nationals in the same season, you would not even have been in the top 16 for the World's Points last season. This is how many points people collected from regionals throughout the season, which I think is insane. I think that's insane to think about, even though, of course, it's a hypothetical scenario, and of course, no one has ever done something like that, where they won all the YCSs in a season. But I think if you can look at a system and say, like, yeah, someone who won all of your YCSs and nationals was not even in the top 16, I think there's a flaw in the system. I think there's a flaw in the system if a person who's got that many points from YCSs and nationals is not even in the top 16. So, yeah. OTS championships remain unchanged. I think they only get 2 points anyways. National and state championships and YCSs remain unchanged. I think this is fine. The biggest problem was how many points you got from regionals. Update WQP best finishes. The final change relates to the world's qualifying points in Europe. While previously you were able to earn points over an unlimited number of events, for the 2027 season, only your top 12 finishes throughout the season will count towards your point total. Oh my god. Oh my god, this is so good. I've been asking for this for years now. I mean, it's the world's qualifying points. I'm happy that they exist, and I know they're not a huge topic of like discussion because it doesn't matter for a lot of people, but for the few people that this matters for, like the few people who really grind for this, like 50 to 100 players maybe, this is so big. So what this means is you can play more than 12 events. You can play all the events you want to, but only the best 12 will count. What this stops is people grinding regional after regional after regional after regional, where they just go to a bunch of small regionals and some big regionals, and they just collect points, and it stops people from just outgrinding people who play better but less events. 12 is still a lot because we only have 3 YCSs. I think my points were from 18 or 19 events last season. I mean, that's still a lot though, Jordan, right? Like going from 18 to 19 down to 12, I think is a major factor. Even if this only shaves like 50 to 100 points off of the total. And the thing is, you have to see this change in combination with the other change, right? Like bigger regionals will give you less points now, which means that smaller regionals will have more impact. So if they don't make this change, if they only make this change up here, then what people can do is just go to a bunch of 10 point, 20 point, 30 point regionals across the entire season and just play every single weekend. And I mean, if someone wants to play every single weekend, that's fine. But by doing so, you force everyone else to do that. And I can only speak for myself here, but I hated the fact that you felt when you wanted to compete in the World's Points, you felt like you had to travel to every single regional. And not only the ones that were even in your country, you felt forced to go to Italian Opens, UK Opens, French Opens, and not even just Opens, because you could argue like, okay, going to an Open is cool, but even just like a random regional in France with like 300 players, I would often think about going there, and it's so expensive. It takes so much time, so much effort, so much money to go to these events just to stay in contention. And it's kind of like a thing where you're only doing it because everyone else is doing it. And so like if everyone else wasn't doing it, then you would also not do it. But and this is just a way to me like, okay, you don't have to do this. No one has to do this anymore. Right? You just don't have to sacrifice every single weekend and go to regionals in France, in Italy, in the UK, in Germany, just to be able to stay in contention. Because realistically, the ideal outcome for a world's qualifying system is that you reward people who are good and consistent, right? You want people who do well at multiple YCSs, at nationals, and at some regionals. That's who you want to send to Worlds, right? You want to send the people to Worlds who've been consistent throughout the season, not the people who just give up everything to play every single weekend, right? And just play anywhere for 10 points, can go there for 20, and so on and so forth, right? And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the people who did this last season, because, I mean, that's just what the old system forces people to do. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you wanted to go to Worlds, you had to play a shit ton of regionals. And I think that is something that's good to get rid of. So I don't know if 12 is the perfect number. I genuinely, no idea. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. We'll see how it goes. But what I'm mainly happy to see here is that they are making changes. Like, they are addressing some of the issues that the system definitely had. The system had flaws, and they're trying to fix it. That's all I need. If this turns out not perfect, then maybe we'll change. We'll get more changes in the future for it. But like, at least there is a will to improve upon the system, which is what matters. Yeah. In the event that duelists are tied, the highest points total earned at a single event will be used as the tiebreaker. This was always the case. The tiebreaker was always the biggest points that you got at an event. But unironically, this was not a great tiebreaker before this change, because I'll give you an example. If two people were tied at 500 points and the biggest finish for one person was winning a YCS for 96 points, and for another person, the biggest finish was 30th place at the French Open for 110 points or something, the person from the French Open would be in front of the YCS champion, which is insane to me. With the cap of 64 now for regionals, this tiebreaker now finally makes sense. The tiebreaker now finally makes sense because now the biggest finishes you can get are winning nationals and winning YCSs. Those are the ones that give you the most points. So as tiebreakers, those are the ones, like, if you win nationals for 128 points in a tiebreaker situation, you will be ahead of someone who just got points from regionals, right? So yeah. If all 12 finishes are tie, I mean, that's not gonna happen. Why are we making this change? This change is being made to make the World's qualification point playoff more accessible to duelists while placing an emphasis on rewarding consistent performances. Duelists may choose to continue improving on their results throughout the season, at the conclusion of which the best 12 will... Yeah, it's... Honestly, the idea behind it is perfect on both of these changes. The idea behind these changes is wonderful. I love that they're approaching this, because this is exactly the issue I had with the system. And it was very, very discouraging that it worked the way it did. So I'm very happy about this. The rest of this, I think, doesn't change it. So yeah, okay. Honestly, perfect. The system is much better this way, I'm sure. Whether it's perfect, I cannot say. But it is so much more encouraging to see that these changes are being made, and that is something that is looked at, and something that they are monitoring, and something that they are addressing. I think is good. I love that. I think that is cool. Shouldn't have been an issue to begin with. They could have seen that coming. You can argue that, but I think it's fine that they are... Like, they introduced the World's Point system at this point almost 10 years ago. The first year was 2017, and they've come a long way since. They've changed a bunch of things about the system every year, essentially. And I'm happy with that. I think when they introduced the system for the first time in 2017, I was very, very happy about it, because I think it was just such a big improvement over just having the World's invites given out at the European Championships, because that was just one event in the year. That was the only way to go to Worlds. And so they introduced a system that rewarded consistency and like performances at YCSs and so on and so forth. And they've just been improving on it like year after year after year. So, and I'm happy with that. It doesn't need to be perfect right out of the gate, but making small improvements, or big improvements in this case, over time is very, very important to me. So I like this a lot. Will you do the points race this season? With the amount of stress I had last season, I think at the beginning I'm going to take it slow. But I think the good news about this is that it does allow you to take it slow. I think in this case, where people cannot grind infinite regionals to get infinite points, and where regionals are capped at 64 points to begin with, I think it is much more realistic to just get through this by just doing well at YCSs and a couple of bigger regionals. So like, I think it's, you don't have to fully commit to this in the beginning. You don't have to start going to every regional as soon as the season starts, because there's no rush and there's no reward for just playing every single small regional, right? So I think it's good, because keep in mind 12 finishes includes it includes the 3 YCSs and the nationals. So if you get points at those 4, you only need points, or you can only get points from 8 regionals total in like an entire year. So that is something that is so much more relaxed, right? Like because I go to regionals anyways. Like if there's a regional somewhere in my area, or a German Open, or even a French Open that isn't too far away, like I'll go there because I play the game. Like I want to go to regionals anyways. But the difference is having a choice, or feeling like you have to in order to even stay in the contention. Like the difference is, if there's a regional and I want to go there, I'll go anyways. And then if I do well, it'll be good for me, or I have to go there, otherwise, you know, I'm screwed. So that is the difference. It's not like I don't want to play regionals, just to make that clear. Like I like playing regionals, and I think regionals should be a part of this. It should not only be determined from YCS performances, but you should never feel forced to play a regional every weekend in order to compete, or for people to freaking like. I remember last season, just to give you an example, there was a weekend where I think it was the Italian Open was on Saturday and the French Open was on Sunday, or maybe it was the UK Open. I don't know. There were 2 opens. One was on Saturday, one was on Sunday. And some people, I didn't go to the Italian Open, but some people genuinely, they played the Italian Open on Saturday, which was a 10 or 11 round tournament, until they probably played until like 9 or 10 p.m. And then they went on a car drive the entire night for like 10 hours to go from the Italian Open to the French Open to play another 11 round tournament on the Sunday, which is not only incredibly stressful, but I also think, like, I think encouraging that kind of thing that's dangerous, because they were driving tired probably as hell after playing the Italian Open, and you have to you have to drive through the entire night to get to the French Open in time. And that's just one example of the kind of things that people were encouraged to do with the previous system, and that's just not good, man. That is just not something that people would do if they had a choice. Like they just wouldn't do that. And that it's not the only occurrence of this. Like, because think about it, we have 2 Italian Opens, 2 German Opens, 2 French Opens, 2 UK Opens in a season, 3 YCSs, and nationals. That's already 12 of those big tournaments, and then a bunch of other big regionals. And very, very frequently those regionals would be like Saturday. One is on Saturday in Germany, the other one is on Sunday in the UK. The next week, there's one on Saturday in France and on Sunday in Italy, and so on and so forth. It just encouraged so much crazy behavior from people that I think there needs to be some change about it. And this is definitely a good start to it. So I'm happy about that.